ground. I'm thinking mid-January.
Benjamin Coffin III, the enemy of Avenue A.
Hey, man, you got a whole lot of nerve showing your face here after what just happened.
Listen, guys, this was not my fault.
Go to hell.
You put the cops on standby.
Yes, but I never wanted it to get out of control.
Why did Muffy
Allison,
miss the show?
there was a death in the family.
Who died?
Our Akita.
Evita.
You make fun, yet I'm the one attempting to do some good. Or do you really want a neighborhood where people piss on your stoop every night? Bohemia, Bohemia's a fantasy in your head. This is Calcutta. Bohemia is dead. Dearly beloved, we gather here to say our goodbyes. Here she lies, no one knew her worth.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. We are closing out musicals in March. This has been a very much of a roller coaster of a musicals in March this year. Wow. Extreme highs and very low lows. If you are brand new, we always talk about movies that have been adapted from a literary source. It isn't always a book. Today it is actually, but it isn't always. Sometimes it's a magazine article or a play or a poem or a song or novella or a short story. As long as a movie has been adapted from a literary source that is easily accessible for everybody, ideally for free, like through your Libby app, or your local library. And as long as the movie is streaming somewhere on a major platform, we will consider it. And because we try to do a brand new episode every single week, we are constantly looking for suggestions. Coming up, we have Mysteries in May for the first time, which is something we've never done before. So give us your mystery suggestions and you can meet other listeners of this podcast, interact with us in a couple of little places on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. You type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. We have a couple of posts there at the very top kept by Thaddeus, the shows we've covered and then the shows people are requesting. But people just like write on there their ideas. If you have just one on the top of your head and you just want to get it out there, totally fine. So those are great places. We're on social media. With social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, you spell out book versus and movie. And then we have an old-timey email, and I think I deleted an email by accident this week. So if you wrote us this week and you didn't hear back, I'm apologizing. Please send again. But anyway, it's book versus movie podcast, spelled it out at gmail.com.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. That is where we put up about 7 years worth of shows. We've been doing the show for 10 years now. So some of the things that are up on that wall that I just put up there: Father of the Bride, The Man Who Fell to Earth, The Women, Cabaret, West Side Story, Cats, My Fair Lady, Princess and the Frog. Some really great episodes are on there. So that's a great place to support us. Or if you could leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. I know some of you are reaching out through Spotify. Thank you. But we also have been doing really well on Good Pods, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave us a review, that would be amazing. Oh, and I want to say thank you to Rosario, for signing up for, we have a Rosaria that we're talking about today, but this is Rosario who signed up for Patreon. So thank you, Rosario.
Thank you. Welcome. And so today, I don't even know where to begin. We're going to be talking about Rent. And my resident musical theater nerd, my daughter, I asked her about this. She actually is not, she's not a Rent person per se, but I was asking her about it, like what's the scuttlebutt amongst the musical theater kids of today, and she said that because Rent, as we said last week, has a massive following, but mostly they pretend like this movie does not exist. And I was like, well, come on, I mean, I know theater people poo-poo movie adaptations a lot of the time. I was kind of excited. We have a lot of our main folks that were in the Broadway production are in this, and so I was excited to see it. So in today's episode, we have, okay, let me see if I get this straight. We have a movie that has been adapted from a Broadway show, that has been adapted from an opera, that has been adapted from a book.
And that book was actually turned into a play a few times.
Yes. It must have been kind of something of a hit. 1851, our source material is from 1851. It is, okay, and forgive me, I do not French. Scenes de la vie de Bohème, I think is what it is. Scenes of Bohemian life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, this says 1847 to 1849. So it's about, and our author, is Louis Henri, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Murger?
Murger?
Murger.
Right.
Like burger, but with an M.
But with an M. And he also he himself took to spelling his first name with a Y. It's normally spelt with an I in French, but he changed it. So this is his nom de plume. Henri Murger. And
he's most known for this book. It reflects his own life. He lived as a poor working artist in a garret, which is when we talked about An American in Paris, and there's those rooftop apartments where the artists would live. They were cheap, and you had the very low ceiling line, often slanty. That's a garret, and the artists and poets and bohemians would often rent them because they're inexpensive, and they don't generally have a lot of money. So I read this book. I gotta say, I just kind of found it to be just okay.
Yeah.
There's interesting stuff in it. You know what it really reminded me of a lot was I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it reminds me of I Am a Camera.
Yes.
Which is the basis for Cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
And similar society. We're in Paris, though, instead of Berlin. These wild, like, free-loving artists and models and writers and poets. And the book is really like a series of vignettes. It's not plot heavy. It's just like salacious tidbits about these artists and their free-loving lives. But you do have all of the characters. If you're a fan of La Bohème, all of your favorite characters are in this book. So the book has our main central romance of Mimi, and in the book, his name is it's spelled Shaunard. So however that's pronounced in French, I don't know. But he's a poet. That's the important thing. The main character is this poet, and he falls in love with this wild bohemian gal, very Sally Bowles from Cabaret. They have this whirlwind romance. I think they meet at a ball or something like that. It's very much like when we talked about An American in Paris, very similar kind of a scene. And he has a friend who has a similar situation going on with another woman named Musette. So if you know La Bohème, the opera, Musette's Waltz, that's the character. So it's a little bit different than in the opera. In the book, our main character, the poet, realizes that Mimi has consumption, tuberculosis, and that basically she's on a one-way street with the terminal illness here. And he realizes, I'm a poor poet. I can't possibly help her through this, terrible illness that's on the horizon. And I need to make sure that she ends up with somebody who can. So I forget the circumstances. He dumps her somehow. He gets her to break it off with him, and he has a little hand in arranging for her to end up in a relationship with a vicomte, Biscount. Another thing I'm not well versed in, nobility, and but a noble guy who's rich, and sure enough, he falls in love with her because who wouldn't? Because she's Mimi, the queen of Bohemia. They have a relationship, but the thing is that Mimi is still very much in love with the poet guy, and Mimi, as much as the new rich guy is throwing money and clothes and stability and all this stuff at her, she's still in love with the poet, and she's not very nice to the rich guy. She's constantly taunting him like, well, the poet, he used to say I was beautiful in this way. I don't know why. I guess you don't see me that way. Or, my poet, he used to do this and he used to do that. He would say, the rich guy would be like, well, what do you want? I'll buy you furs. I'll buy you, like that Dramarama song. Anything. And she says, what I really want is, I really want for you to buy me this little book of poetry by my ex-lover. And he's like, no. I forget what she does. She does something shady to earn the money to buy the book of poetry because the poet has published this book. Then she memorizes, this is Mimi, then she memorizes the poems and recites them ad nauseum to the rich guy, her boyfriend, till he dumps her. So now she's out on the street and she's got tuberculosis. And her friend group from Bohemia encounter her. She is at death's door, and they bring her back to the garret, and they realize like she's way beyond any kind of help that we can give her, and they take her to a hospital. So in the book, she goes to a hospital. She doesn't die in the picturesque garret. But here's this is really weird. The book, I was saying to Margot before we got on the air, like this guy writes like somebody who loves the sound of his own voice. It's so flowery. It goes on and on and on, describing everybody's dress and mannerisms, and in a way that's not really serving. Again, it already is very plot light, but we're really enjoying the descriptions of like these little, again, as I said, salacious tidbits. Anyway, so they send Mimi, who's dying, to the hospital. Because if she's going to get any help, she'll get it at the hospital.
Right.
And this is weird. Did you read the end where she dies?
No, Margot, I gave up.
Okay,
I focused on Jonathan Larson after I was like, I needed to pick up my mood.
He's kind of a blowhard, and it's kind of a bummer. So this ending is so weird to me. Mimi's in the hospital, and they're all just praying that maybe, the doctors can pull some kind of miracle and, help her get some of her life back. Gonard, or whatever his name is, the poet, befriends a medical student at the hospital and says, hey, if you could keep me posted about what's going on with Mimi, I'd really appreciate it. He gets a letter from the medical student saying, sir, I'm so sorry. Mimi is dead. I showed up today and her bed was empty and she has died. Please accept my condolences. And Gonard he's despondent, Mimi, my Mimi is dead. And they're out, I think they're drinking their sorrow away. And they come upon this medical student. And the medical student says, oh, I'm so glad I ran into you. Listen, that letter I sent you, I was totally mistaken. She was not dead. She was. I thought that her bed being empty meant that she had died. They actually just told me that they moved her to a different ward, so that somebody else could have the bed in this more critical place. And they're like, she's alive. And they all race to the hospital. And when they get to the hospital, they're like, yeah, she was alive, and so we moved her to this ward, but she's dead now. What? What was this about, sir, Mr. Rouget? What are you doing? What is this business? Like the death of Mimi in the book, like, is she dead? No, not quite. Let's get her out of the garret. Now she's in the hospital. Oh, but not quite. No, they've moved her to this other ward. But no, now she is actually really and truly dead. And then the end is basically like, yes, she was my one great love, basically, Anyway, but it is nothing if not descriptive
Yes.
of the life of this scene of bohemian artists. I got to hand it to Mr. Puccini and company in adapting this story and making it much more interesting, much more dramatic. And the other thing was, I sort of felt like, and you read the beginning of the book.
Yes.
I feel like, and oddly, I also felt the same way about this movie, which we'll get to. But I felt in the book that we kind of leap into this world with these characters, and I'm expected to care about them and have stakes in their outcomes, and I don't. Like, you have not done the work to give me anything but about like what this guy wears to care about any of these people. I don't care about them. So, meh.
Yeah. It doesn't.
Opinion.
It didn't sell very well. Like I was saying, they did dramatize it a few times, and maybe that improved the material. But what we really refer to, and it's funny because Jonathan Larson, who writes Rent, said he actually read the book and loved it, and then also it's not as much on the opera. But I always think of La Boheme. I always think of Trading Places when Dan Aykroyd gets his tickets. La Boheme, it's an opera. But this is an opera that is...
I always think of Moonstruck.
Oh, yes.
I always think of Moonstruck.
Yes. I mean, it's a beautiful opera. I mean, my parents, this is something they always played. But, I mean, it's the same...
lovely.
It really is. I mean, they set it in France. It comes out in 1896. The language is Italian, but... They're in the Latin Quarter. We have a couple of sets of couples. They're all artists and poets and seamstresses, painters, singers. There's this really big cast, and they do meet. We meet them on Christmas Eve, like we do in the movie. And it's just about basically Chonard. It's their group of
Rodolfo.
friends.
We know him mostly by his first name in La Boheme. Thankfully, his name is Rodolfo in the opera. And then you have Mimi. You have then the other pair is Marcello and Musetta.
Mm-hmm.
Sconard is here a musician, but in the book, I think he's the main poet. It's a very much tightened up plot.
Mm-hmm.
and we get, partly because of the beautiful music, Puccini also wrote, Madame Butterfly. I mean, he's very good at eliciting emotion. And so we do care a lot more about these lovers in this opera than I feel like we are ever moved to care in the book. And I think it does a good job of showing that bohemian scene, perils and pitfalls of it, as well as the fun bits.
Right.
And it's beautiful music. And when she dies, it is truly sad. It's not this weird, like, pull the rug out and then put it back and then pull it out again business that's in the book.
She dies in his arms, right? It's terribly sad. It's one of the most, I mean, we're book versus movie. We're not opera experts, but I understand the importance of this particular piece of work. And this is the bohemian lifestyle, the original story that it comes from. I think it's a very I love, like, Paris 1830s. I think that's very interesting and rich. And it's the same thing. Mimi has tuberculosis. Mimi gets sick. Yeah. Mimi comes back. Mimi died.
Tremendous lung capacity for someone with tuberculosis, can we say?
Exactly. And it's one of the most popular operas out there, requested, whatever. So
it's very romantic. It's very accessible music. It's not too cerebral. And it's a beautiful love story. I think that the creators, because it's not just Puccini, of course, there's a whole team that puts together an opera. They did a good job of picking out the main elements and without getting too much into the weeds about all the different kooky characters and whatnot. Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll swing into with Jonathan Larson. He's born in White Plains, New York, 1960. He's very tall, he grows up in a very loving home where he is supported. He's a musician, he's a writer, and he wants to be a composer and a lyricist. And, you know, when you grow up in White Plains, it's very close to New York City. He goes to shows all the time, and he has all this kinds of promise. Goes to Adelphi University, then goes to the city. And he always has little projects going, but he's also always broke. He and his friends live in these like rat infested holes. He had what he'd call these peasant dinners. So all their broke friends would get together, and a lot of them would become a part of Rent later. But this is around 88, 89. He starts losing friends to AIDS. And we've talked about this before.
It was devastating. And New York City in that period this is pre-Mayor Giuliani. You could live there as an artist. Mm-hmm. You know, you were still struggling, but it was possible. Artists did live there, and they live like in the places that are squillions and squillions of dollars today. And then AIDS, like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of a good place to look for like other artistic iterations of, you know, interpretations of that era in that place. There's a lot of them.
Angels in America.
Angels in America. Yeah, definitely.
There was a TV movie with Molly Ringwald, and she played Allie.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a girl, she was like 26, and she got it from a boyfriend that worked at Studio 54. There were men and women dying. There were straight people, there were gay people, and it was all over the place. And there was also a lot of like intravenous drug use at the time. That definitely contributed to it.
And homophobia, discrimination, hate crime, all of that, which we've talked about in other works and other movies in other places. But in New York City, you know, it was the epicenter of New York City and San Francisco and Chicago, also epicenters of all of this, you know, coming to a head. So there also was a lot of activism and protesting, ACT UP, and so on. And the other big theme that's in the book is, in Rent, is the gentrification and the homelessness that's come. I mean, the gentrification and development, the not so slow plod to Manhattan becoming the inaccessible billionaire playground that it is today. So a lot of that. And it was, as you and I said, we need to talk about, you were talking about how it workshopped and all of that.
Right. So he has a few different, you know, he's done some plays, he's done some children's work, he's done a lot of different things, but he finally gets this shot that he meets a producer that's a very small theater in the city and that wants to do a musical. It's not a place where they normally did musicals, and they don't have like a huge space. So they have just like a couple of tables on the stage, and you kind of move things around. So Jonathan, he worked at it, was constantly redoing things, putting in songs, taking out the songs,
and bringing in a lot of other people to come in and help him with the story, or help him with the songs, or help him with the lyric, or the structure, and the sequence. So there's been a lot of debate about whose hand is where on this particular piece.
Right. Yeah, guys, he did have a producer. He was brought in specifically to create a modern day version of La Boheme. New York is like, and this is 90s New York. So it's David Dinkins, and then I think it's Dinkins into Giuliani. I think that was the track that it was.
I think so. We moved in like with Giuliani.
Same.
Like right around the same time as right when he came into office. And there was, and I am not a theater person, but I am by marriage. And so, you know, we were living like this. We were living all cheap apartments with broke artists and theater folk. And there was a lot of theater being made at the time about these same issues. They did not all become Broadway smash hits like Rent did, but I remember seeing so many plays about these exact themes
and movies.
You know, movies too.
A lot of independent films, a lot of theater. These dramatic pieces. I mean, it took away a generation of just incredible people. When you
really did.
when you look at the numbers, it's just astonishing, like how many people were wiped out, and they would get sick and then like 2 months later be gone. It'd
just be gone, just disappear.
Yeah. And so there's all this stuff like
terrible.
people who were great artists, and then like their work is appreciated after they're gone, but there wasn't they didn't have a marriage for a lot of these people because marriage wasn't legal between gay people. So then there's all that mishigas of like people having their hands on stuff when that person didn't want them to have it, but they just died, and they probably broke when they died, and they were, it's a real sad situation. He, like a lot of artists, he had a lot of friends who were artists, and they helped contribute to his ideas. And he was very tall. He was very gregarious. He was always filming things. So there's so much footage of him. And
there really is a lot.
A ton.
Yeah.
And it's all of his friends are into it too. So he goes, so they start to work at a lab, and they're workshopping it, and it's coming together. It's gelling. And then on January 24th, they had a New York Times reporter who was coming, and it was going to the opening night for this small little theater. And he gets the break of he gets to talk to the New York Times.
It really does get the hugest break. Yeah.
Right. That's not easy. He goes home. He dies within a few hours. And he had said he'd felt sick, that they thought he had the flu. And he was feeling out of breath. He was having the flu-like symptoms. And I think it's called Marfan syndrome that his family found out. But he went to the emergency. New York's got emergency rooms. Like, you got something wrong, you can get to one really quickly. He did do that. But the doctors told him it was no big deal. And he was young. He was only 35. He appeared to be healthy. He just said he wasn't feeling well. And they all would say, well, what's your life like? He goes, I sleep 2 hours a night. I'm writing all the time. I'm at the theater. I'm over at this place, at this rehearsal space. I'm over there. And they're like, well, you got to calm down. You got to de-stress. And he says, I can't. I got a play that's coming up and people are depending on me. He dies. And then the next night, his whole cast puts on the show because that's what they're there for.
That's what you do. It's
what you do. And you and I've been through loss. I mean, it's like you do have to get out of bed and do things and go, even if you're not feeling great. I mean, it's a story with a lot of sad themes and death in it. So I'm sure the actors have already kind of like accessed those emotions and were thinking in that way. But, he loved them and they loved him. They were a very tight-knit crew, and they were very they were very important in the process of creating these characters.
I get the feeling it was very much like when we talked about Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yes.
Like a very similar kind of process to it getting to Broadway. So having said all of that, you never saw Rent on stage.
No. So, let me just say, it runs in this smaller theater. And of course, like the Times runs an article, like, we just interviewed this guy like a few days ago. Didn't know he was dying. And that is probably, it's terrible to say, it's like the best marketing you can have.
It's
because
true, though. I mean, that's kind of what happened.
Everybody's talking about that. Did you hear about the guy? He finally has a show and he dies the night before it's going to come out. So it's an invitation for people to buy tickets, even if you're just curious. The show is, now we both said we hadn't seen it. To get tickets for Rent, especially the first couple of years, was impossible. They moved to 41st Street, so they had a bigger theater, but they also Jonathan had an idea, and they did this for him, was that the first 2 rows would be $20 a seat, because he wanted people who couldn't afford to go to the theater, especially young people. Because you and I know, like, a lot of times you can't go because the tickets are $100 a piece, and it's ridiculous.
Broadway, even in those days, Broadway tickets were outrageously
expensive. So, people would line up overnight. They would sleep overnight to get the tickets. It was a constant, crazy long line of young people camping out, hoping to buy $20 tickets to Rent. And I feel like that went on. I remember seeing them in the wintertime. I remember seeing them in the heat of the summertime. I don't even know how long it went on and on and on like that. And
very devoted. You would hear kids, like these groups of kids who were coming out of there, and they would be singing the songs on the subway or in the park. Kids just really, really responded to it. And I don't know if that's because I don't know what because it was a little younger than I was.
I feel like it too. Like I felt a little old for it because they're like late teens, early 20s. That's what they're playing. Like just out of college. And I was like a couple of years older than that, a few years older than that. But it sells out. So then they have to get a bigger theater. That theater sells out. And then the celebrities that would go to this show, like every day you would hear about in Page Six or whatever, or Liz Smith, people would say, this is the person that Patrick Swayze went last night and Heather Locklear went this night and this person. So it was always like it was a hot ticket. Everybody went to see it. I think my sister went to see it and she loved it. I mean, and I know people who saw it a dozen times. Like it's one of their favorite shows. There was nothing like
would go
it.
See it again and again.
Nothing. And he also, sorry, Margot, he also said he wanted to make the hair of his generation, which you think he did.
It's, in that regard, it is successful. I do. And so, as we said, you and I have never seen this live on stage. So we know there may be people listening, like this is their jam, this show. So here's what I did. I don't know how you did this. What I did this week was I read the book, listened to the opera, then I watched the movie of Rent, and then I watched the film of the Broadway production that was done like in the 2008-ish. That's how I did this. Okay, how did you do it?
I listened to La Boheme. I sort of got an instructional audiobook about La Boheme. I then saw this movie. No, I saw the documentary. It's like a 2-hour documentary that I saw about Jonathan Larson that goes right up to the filming, by the way. So we'll get into the filming in a second, but all about his impulses and things like that. I then last night was Easter. That's why we didn't drop an episode yesterday, but I was watching it last night, and then you and I were texting back and forth. And then I did see, by the way, a couple of years ago, there was a live version done on TV, which I thought was really well done. They had a couple of glitches, but it was, I thought it had a really young cast. And I think this is going to be important. They have to be young. They have to be early 20s because they're so naive and they're so like...
Otherwise, it's like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? You would never put up with a 30-year-old who behaved like this. It has to be someone really young. And it's still close to that time. I think, like, when did Magic Johnson... was he... I think it's like 93.
It was in the early 90s.
Yeah. Like, there were some tentpole things that happened where people would, some people would expand their empathy.
Remember that?
Greg Louganis. Yeah. And it was like we said, it was, Magic Johnson's still with us. He's healthy. He's fine. I mean, it was a death sentence. So
it really was. So when he announced that he had it, like
everyone thought,
well,
yeah.
And we're like, well, this is his goodbye.
Yeah.
He's still here. Yeah.
So it was a devastating disease. And then finally, they sort of figured out the cocktails that work best for people. Now, you can still get it. You still need to be cautious.
It is still a pandemic. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Globally, it still is a very serious health issue.
Especially in different parts of the world. There's pockets where it's a devastating disease. It just takes you from the inside. Just emoliates you. It's really awful. So...
first exposure to this musical now for me in 2024 is this movie. And I thought, I'd heard the music, of course, because you lived in New York in those days. You couldn't escape that music. But I thought, like I said, I was the person who lived among the artists and in the village and whatnot, and people living in Alphabet City and scraping change to buy a slice of pizza. I know that world very, very well. And I worked in the art world and in those days. And I really know that world well. I immediately do not relate to this movie. Like, there's nothing in this movie.
Should we play the trailer?
Oh, my goodness.
All right, let's play the trailer and then we'll get into this movie.
There are times when we're dirt broke and hungry and freezing, and I ask myself, why the hell am I still living here?
All life is yours to miss.
A bunch of us are getting together tonight. Would you like to come with us?
Sure.
You always said how lucky you were that we were all friends. But it was us, baby, who were the lucky ones.
Revolution Studios presents the musical phenomenon that defined a generation. Rent.
I think one of the things to keep in mind when it comes to this film is it's directed by Christopher Columbus. And he did Mrs.
Right.
Doubtfire, which I like. He also did the first two Harry Potter movies, which are not nearly as dangerous or exciting as the later films are. It's so
Or relatable.
relatable.
Yeah.
So in the documentary I saw, Jonathan dies and then the music comes out, and then the family waited a few years before they wanted to sell it because they needed time themselves to kind of heal. You know, it's a huge loss.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so the entire family is a part of this production, and they have all these incredible people that are in the part. But so
What a list of performers. So we have many of the same people who did these roles on Broadway. We're famous for doing these roles on Broadway. And then we have some other extra folks in, like Rosario Dawson. Nobody's faulting the cast. Just spoiler alert, I hated this movie. Nobody's faulting the cast.
no,
The cast is really trying their best here.
they're trying to take this movie, and they were doing the casting for it, and the producers are saying, like, they immediately, like, everybody looks so great. We just hired them. And
Everybody
I'm like,
looks like they just left the La Costa Spa. What is this?
that's a part of it. Once again, we're talking about young people. The second song is called Rent. And it's like, I don't want to pay last year's rent or this year or next year. Like, yeah, I don't either, but I have to because I don't have a house.
Yeah.
When you're 20 or 21, you could stomp your feet and say that. And in the show, it's just the way it's presented because it's so exciting because it's like all the stage and
Yes.
everything. You get into it. It's world building.
Yes, I agree. And yeah, I hated this movie. I hated this movie from start to finish. It is a major bummer. I'll get into why the details, but I will say, I just want to if anybody who loves this musical and was like, but wait, Brett, I did then go watch the film of the production, of the stage production. And then I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it because it sparkles. It's not this like heavy, of the movie. The movie is just so heavy. It's just relentlessly heavy. The play has little moments of levity and fun characters, and they're presenting the themes, and it's just way better. And it just didn't get a chance, I feel like. Let's talk about their, what must it be, 7,000 square foot loft that they're living in Alphabet City, rent free for over a year, and they're complaining. They seem like such jerks. Like, we don't want to pay rent on our giant loft.
Like, but you don't own the building. You can't just do that. I mean, the first of all, okay, so I love Anthony Rapp, Adam Pascal, Jesse L. Barton. I mean, these are, and Dina Menzel.
They're bringing their A game.
They are
I am not,
absolutely.
The acting is great. The singing, the dancing, they're doing it. They're they are doing it.
Yeah.
It's the staging, it's the directing, it's the art production, it's the lighting, it's the pacing, it's the extra like crazy media elements. There's a lot of things that don't age well, even by the time this movie is made. What is a cyber studio? What is that? And why is it such a threat to artists? I lived in New York City among artists in that time. No, I don't remember anybody a cyber studio is coming. I don't ever remember having that convo with anybody.
They liked the internet. The internet was a place you could reach out to other people and put your stuff out into the world. Like you could make your own channels. Like people had their own, before you had a YouTube, you kind of like made up your own space. Yeah. But it was an outlet to like, it's not the big threat that it's supposed to be. Taye Diggs, like all these people, I really like them, but they're too old for the parts.
They're too old. I'm sorry, but like, pay the guy his rent.
Yeah, so pay the guy his
rent. He lets you have a year rent free, and you're like,
I don't want to pay it anymore. I
want to shoot my movie.
So Anthony Rapp, he plays Mark, and Mark is he's dumped by Maureen, and Maureen goes out with Joanne. Maureen, that's her name? Okay.
Yes.
So that's a couple. Jesse L. Martin is with Angel, and that's Wilson Jermaine Heredia, who
was also, they were both in the Broadway cast.
Cold.
Come on. My house, I'll be your shelter. Just pay me back with 1,000 kisses. Be my lover, I'll cover you.
Open your door, I'll be your tenant. Don't got much baggage to lay at your feet, but sweet kisses I've got to spare. I'll be there and I'll cover you.
Got no problem.
Listen, I mean, they're doing it.
There's a whole thing where they're singing together, and it's
Merry
great.
Christmas, I killed a dog.
What can I say? I mean, I did like some of the songs very much, and
there were some moments. Yeah, then the music is good. There were some moments that I thought were good. Some scenes where it kind of let up a little bit, but it is like this. It is so dark. Like, I mean, visually dark. Where's Rosario Dawson? Is that shadow her over there? I cannot tell.
Yeah, she has HIV. Her character, because she's, and then Roger. That's Adam Pascal in the worst wig I have seen.
What is this wig?
What?
Why does he have to have a wig? Why can't he just have his hair? What's the I don't understand the choices. I don't get the wig. Okay. So Mimi and Roger are the same characters from La Boheme. There are our tragic Mimi, who in the opera has consumption. In Rent, she has HIV. Roger also has HIV. And that was a very difficult conversation for people to have if you were positive, or even to ask somebody. Like, it's a very personal question, but you need to know your life is at stake. It was a very difficult. So I appreciate that element of the musical. I'm not crazy about how it is in this movie. So here's the thing. Rosario Dawson is 26 years old. I looked it up. 26 years old during when she made this.
Oh, wow.
She's playing a character who is 19. And then similarly in the opera, Roger, because Mimi's such a mess and she's sick, Roger thinks, well, I can't possibly give her the care that she's going to need. I'm going to make sure that she gets into a relationship with my rich friend Benny, who's letting me live in his squillion-dollar loft for a year rent-free. So that's Taye Diggs. And listen, Taye Diggs.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And he doesn't seem like such a bad guy. But everybody's like, you are the villain. But he seems fine. Anyway, he is now in a relationship with Mimi. and or not in a relationship. She had been in a relationship with him. This is the thing that I played this scene for my daughter, and she was like, "What?" So they had been in a relationship 2 years ago. First of all, Rosario Dawson is 26. She's supposed to be 19. And she says, "Roger, my relationship with Benny is over. It was 2 years ago when you were 17, young lady." What is this? What is this? What is this? Is it a plot hole, or we're just expected to believe that you had this relationship with this guy? And Taye Diggs, by the way, in this movie is 34. So you would have been 17, and he would have been how old? 30? I don't know. What are we talking about? Yeah,
she's also an exotic dancer.
Mm-hmm.
Great dancer. I mean, it looks like a cool club. I would go, but it's
she's very talented. She can sing, she can dance, she can act. I'm not faulting a single performer. She did not choose that lighting. She did not choose that blocking. She did not choose. It's so bad.
It feels like it was the same set for every song, though. It's like filmed the same way.
It was the same set because it freaking was.
Yeah, it was filmed the same way. There's no big differences except for a couple of outdoor scenes. They filmed it on a lot, so they weren't even in New York when they filmed
Which
it.
You can 100% tell.
Yeah.
Like, just...
Your speed wanna hit the street, wanna wheel at the moon like a cat in heat. Just take me out tonight. Please take me out tonight. Don't forsake me. Out tonight. I'll let you make me out tonight. 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 Tonight.
Who do you think you are? Barging in on me and my guitar. Little girl, hey, the door is that way. You better go, you know the fire's out anyway. Take your powder, take your candle. Your sweet whisper, I just can't handle. Well, take your hair in the moonlight, your brown eyes, goodbye, good night.
And then also they added a script, and that's the person that did.
Oh, a Wallflower?
Yes.
Perks of Being a Wallflower?
Perks of Being a Wallflower. So the man who wrote that novel and then wrote and directed the movie, he writes the interstitials here because they write out people talking. Because in the play, yeah, because in the musical, they're just singing the whole time. Whereas
I'm making a face for those of you because you can't see my face right now. I have. And this is a good thing because I have this condition where I can't have thoughts that don't show up on my face.
You don't play poker, do
I
you?
I just made the like most ick face. I cannot believe that that's the same person because the dialogue on Perks of Being a Wallflower are great. Their age, they seem like they're teenagers talking. Like this does not seem like young people talking. It is clunky. It is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. So he does that there. I mean, it opened, like, honestly, somebody wrote in a review, like, just turn it on and watch the first 4.5 minutes when they do Seasons of Love. And
you're done.
And it's good. Like, these are exceptionally talented.
Got it.
Yeah. And then you gotta go. You don't really need to be, I know, I feel bad, but it's like.
And just like in the book, I feel like you're forcing these people on me and expecting me to have stakes in their outcomes and care about them and what they care about. And I'm just like, I said, all I'm thinking is, you guys open your eyes and look around this loft where you're living rent free for a year. And why are you not on your knees thanking this guy? He is genuinely your friend. He could have kicked you out and made so much money on this loft, and all he wants is a little rent.
Yes.
And you can't take a job at BuzzFeed or whatever.
Yeah, and there's a whole thing where she's with Joanne, and like, I don't care about their relationship really.
I don't care about anybody.
And I like both the actors. I think they're great.
I do care about the professor and Angel. though.
Yes.
I think that is the one relationship where they do a good job because we see the entire progression of that relationship. We see them meet. We see them, conversing back and forth and finding common ground. And then they fall in love and we see the whole arc. Everybody else, it's like, well, Maureen dumped me. Well, who's Maureen?
Right.
Dumped me for a woman. Well, okay. And then there's this thing where and this is in the play too. And I thought the same thing when I saw the play, to be honest. But there's this whole thing in the play where this recurring thing of their answering machine.
Mm-hmm.
Marks, he's the filmmaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
The scarf guy.
Scarf guy.
It's Scarf Guy's mom. And it's Scarf Guy's mom. It is Christmas. She's like, hey, honey, just wanted to wish you Merry Christmas. Hope you enjoy the hot plate. I got you. Love you. Take care. And he's like, what a monster. Really? Because it sounds to me like she was just reaching out on Christmas. We're not given any context except that she leaves this very kind holiday message. Okay.
Yeah.
It seems very whiny and spoiled and extremely well-dressed and well-coiffed and manicured and beautiful skin to be so upset about paying rent and taking a little job here and there, I feel.
It's that was my problem too when somebody explained me the plot like way back in the day. I'm kind of like, that's going to annoy me because it's but I think maybe if Jonathan had lived, maybe he would have worked on that more. Maybe you don't know. They kept saying
there's no way to know.
There's no way to know, but they said that he was constantly working on things and changing things and trying to change the pace. And they had tons and tons of rehearsals. It's just that, when he passed, it was pretty much like, all right, this is the show now. And
I can't even imagine. Yeah, because you think it's still evolving, but now what do? Do we stop evolving? I get that. And watching, as I said, I was just like getting more and more angry as this thing was going on, this movie. I was just, I'm going to watch this movie. I'm going to watch this whole movie. Like, somebody turn on, you said you had power back on, turn on a light. I cannot see you. This whole thing in the restaurant where they're singing La Vie Boheme.
Yeah,
it's obnoxious. They should kick you out.
Why didn't they, as I said, Jonathan used to have these peasant dinners. He would have all these people come over to his loft. And that's where you do that. Because I've been to those parties. Somebody puts out a guitar, someone sings, someone, does impressions.
Have it in a park. Impromptu.
Right. But
there's all kinds of other ways we could have done that.
Yeah. And I think they filmed that in New York, that particular, but yeah, but it's obnoxious. Yeah. And
but when I went and watched the Broadway, the film of the Broadway production, that scene is fun and like exciting and rousing and cute and funny. And it's not like a bunch of jerks wrecking other people's property,
ruining their lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally different, and the lighting, and it's very much more sparse, because it's a stage play. So it's much more sparse. There were indicating spaces with lighting and slightly changing backdrops. And it just, when I saw that, it made so much more sense. It's so much more interesting. It's shinier and I care more about these people. I'm getting more of them. You're not hitting me over the head with this set, and it's so much better. So I feel really bad for anybody who only has access to this movie.
Right.
It's not good. And I feel bad for the people who are in this movie too, because they have been inhabiting these characters for a long time. It's not like they just brought them in off the street. These are people who really, really know these characters, and to be in something like this that is so not doing them justice.
It's 10 years later.
I feel bad for them.
It's 10 years later since they did it on stage, and it's like, you want to play the older version. I would think you would want to play the more evolved version.
I feel they could have done that. I don't feel like it's so impossible for them to play these characters, but the way that this is done, as you say, with this dialogue, they seem very juvenile and, where they're like, I should tell you, I should tell you. I should tell you. I should tell you. I just tell her already. You're 35. TikTok, dude. Come on.
Well, nice to have met you.
He's 3 hours late. The samples won't delay, but the cable.
There's another way. Say something. Anything.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Anything but that.
This is weird.
It's weird.
Very weird.
Fucking weird.
I'm so mad that I don't know what to do. Fighting with microphones, freezing down to my bones. And to top it all off, I'm with you.
Feel like going insane. Got a fire in your brain. And you're thinking of drinking gasoline.
As a matter of fact,
honey, I know this act. It's called the Tango Maureen. The Tango Maureen. It's a dark, dizzy merry-go-round as she keeps you dangling.
You're wrong.
Your heart she is mangling.
It's different with me.
And you toss and you turn, cause her cold eyes can burn. Yet you yearn and you churn and rebound.
Yeah.
No. But did I love it more than the book? Now that's a toughie.
Oh, absolutely. I like the performers. I love some of the songs very much.
Idina Menzel, I mean, come on.
She's a star.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
She's really, they're all really giving it their all. I just don't care. I don't care, Mr. Columbus. And that's who I really fault. We don't really get the intro in the movie like we do in the play, where we meet Mark and it's just Mark, and he's got his camera and he's telling you, again, it's very I am a camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's telling you about a little bit about his life and a little about what he's struggling with. And then we have the but I feel like this movie, we immediately start with all of the cast singing the song about the minutes. And I feel like I'm supposed to instantly be like, oh, it's the song. They're singing the song about the minutes. Oh, and there's Mark and there's so-and-so. I'm like, I don't know who any of these people are yet.
If you had no background.
I have zero context.
Right.
Not a one of them. No. Not happy.
Not happy. Sorry, Margot.
Especially after Matilda last week.
I know. We had a couple of really good ones. And yeah, this was...
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Not good. Watch the Broadway. Watch one of the Broadway, the films of one of the Broadway shows. There's a couple of them. Miles better than this movie. And that's really unfortunate. That makes me, because it's not that it's a bad show. But it seems like it's a bad show if all you're going by is this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say I recommend the book, and I definitely don't recommend this movie.
I would recommend...
Love the opera.
Yeah, I love the opera. I would recommend the documentary. I'll see if I could put a link in the show notes or in the Facebook group. I'll put that there because that was really... I loved learning about him. And then I do like the live...
I mean, that was quite a feat.
Yes.
What he did was extremely remarkable.
And we can't say enough like how much it was a part of the culture, especially as New Yorkers at that time. It was
everywhere.
Those billboards were everywhere. And
it was like the Hamilton of its time.
Right.
But just watch one of the productions.
Yeah.
Instead. Even a local community theater production. go see that. Yeah, I felt like we took away from the music. Anyway, I'm just going to poop on this movie all day long if you let me, so I'm just going to stop.
All right. Well, so it was coming up with ideas of what we want to do next because April is sort of more of a hodgepodge of ideas. It's not like a theme. One I was thinking of was Wes Anderson won his first Oscar, and it's a short film. And it's the wonderful story of Henry Sugar. It's a Roald Dahl short story.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny. My daughter was just recommending that.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought, because, we have a short week.
Mm-hmm. The only thought, I had one thought. I did have a thought. I forgot. I had a thought. My one thought was like a Jane Austen. I don't know why. After this, I kind of was craving a Jane Austen sort of a thing. Like a Mansfield Park I never saw that Emma with the Queen's Gambit.
I don't know how many pages they are. I also had The Most Dangerous Game.
Long.
I had The Most Dangerous Game and also The Brave Little Toaster. Somebody recommended that a few weeks ago.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen The Brave Little Toaster.
Me neither. And I don't think I read it.
I think I read it, but I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. So It's The Brave Little Toaster, Thomas M. Ditch. That's our next episode. Like you can tell, we're looking for ideas. Send us your ideas. All those places I mentioned earlier. Our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com. And all of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That's my site. That's where I am for Instagram and Threads. And I'm at Brooklyn Margot for Twitter and also for TikTok. And I do have a couple of clips there of the movie. All right, everyone. We'll be back soon with Thanks for checking us out. 12,500 minutes. It felt like that long when I was watching it, too.
It did. It did.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fit Chick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. We will be back soon with a new episode.